Welcome to DSM's Black Art Matter series. We're here today with Rebecca McDonald, who is a Dallas-based educator and artist. Welcome, Becki.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic.
Good. So we always start the series with this first question, which is, what does Black identity mean to and for you?
Ooh, that's a pretty big question.
Yeah.
Black identity to me is a sense of resiliency. Mm-hmm. It is a sense of courage under fire, constant courage under fire, and the never-ending notion that we want to go home, but we don't know where home is. Mm. Not getting too about it, but I always think back to whenever they'd be like, oh, look at your ancestry, like in elementary school. And they were like, yeah, oh, look at your ancestry. Whose family are immigrants? And I'm sitting there like the only Black girl in class. And I'm just like, my people came here as slaves. So I can't go further than that.
Yeah.
And that always made me a little sad that we were never able to directly tie where we are from Africa. And that's crazy to me. So I feel like that is a huge part of our identity. And when you never have a complete sense of home, you have to kind of make your own home up. And I think that's what we do a lot with Black American culture, is that we've had to create our own home.
And that notion of making your own home up and creating your own home, is that a constant thing, or have you created it and it's here?
I think it changes. Because there are some moments I feel like I've created it and it's here. Mm-hmm. And then incidents will happen that remind me very much like, oh, maybe we really are not welcome. Mm. So you have to kind of replant and make your own home. And I feel like there's maybe a sense that we're never really 100% comfortable, right? So no matter what community we move into, no matter what state we move into, no matter where we are in the U.S., we are always othered. So we will never be able to put down roots completely. And that is, on one hand, that's kind of exhilarating, because it's like, well, hell, if I can't be here, I'm going to just go ahead and mess things up and keep it moving. Yeah. And then on the other hand, it's like, but you kind of want to settle somewhere, right? So it's like equal points exhilarating, equal points depressing.
Yeah.
Oh.
I felt
Saturday.
both those ends there with your answer there. How does that translate into your creative life?
I kind of feel like it's a bit nomadic. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's fueled my creative life, because if I don't ever feel settled, I'm always going to keep working to find something. Mm-hmm. Eventually I'll probably get tired and be like, you know what, fuck it. I'm done. I'm done working. I'm done doing stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'll just have to settle with something, but it keeps me burning, and it keeps me to keep finding things, keep trying things, keep tapping into stories that need to be told. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they're wonderful stories, and sometimes they're deeply sad. Yeah. Sometimes they follow the same old tropes that we throw out of the mama on the couch, mm-hmm. and you know what I mean? But you can't exactly separate trauma from the rest of everything you do, especially if it's generational. Mm-hmm. And that also means you don't negate the joy in all of that. So I feel like that's what kind of burns my creative life. Let's go.
And that idea of trauma, never being able to fully separate that trauma, right?
Yeah.
Of our past and our ancestors and our history, and how that informs who we are and our constant ever-changing identities. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about the toll that takes as a Black artist and a Black individual, mentally and physically?
Ooh, it is really fucking exhausting. Yeah. And it's not that I want to throw the F-bomb out a lot, but I have to emphasize that so very much. It is exhausting. Mm-hmm. When you are in a space, and let's be honest, a lot of theater is typically white theater. Mm-hmm. So you've already had to fight for your place at the table, if you even get there, right? Mm-hmm. And then you're suddenly having to explain things to people who have no concept. And that's not a slight on white people. It's just, I don't think they can ever completely wrap their heads around what it is to wake up and you immediately know that when you go out in the world, you have to code shift. Or to wake up and know that you can't just roll into Target like in your PJ pants and whatever, because you're going to be looked at differently. And, those small things, nobody can really wrap their head around what that's like. And so then you're having to explain all of those little small things. And that takes so much time, when what you really want to say is, can you please just understand it and get it? And then let's create some stuff.
For sure. Yeah.
And you're having to it just gets to the point where you just feel like, just read a book. I feel like I get to where I'm like, man.
Here's Google.
Yeah, honestly, when all of this happened with George Floyd, on one hand, we're stuck in the pandemic. Nobody can go anywhere. So it forces everybody to really open their eyes and look. I'm thankful for that. But then I have things like my best friend from 26 years, who was very Republican, her family's from Alabama, and that's the response. You just go
deep sigh there.
And so now she's having these moments, and she's calling me, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize, like, I said da 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 to you when we were kids, and I had no idea." And I'm like, yes. And on one hand, I'm glad she's having these moments, but on the other hand, I'm like, I'm exhausted having to, okay. And there's another phone call, and there's another message, and it's just like, okay, so having to explain my experience was one thing, but now having to deal with the emotional weight of your apologies is the next part. And so it's like, man, this just doesn't let up.
It's layer on layer on layer.
Yeah, and when you're trying to create stuff and that's already coming at you, man, and you're like,
you want to take a nap right now, just like listening to it.
Yeah, it really, I just got to a point where I had to literally tell people, like, please, you know what, I need a weekend. Like, don't ask me anything about being Black this weekend. Like, I'm gonna watch cartoons. I'm gonna watch some anime. I'm gonna eat all the pizza. I don't want anyone to ask me anything about being Black at all, at all. And some of my friends got it. They were like, yeah, I guess that's kind of a lot. And others were like, but I just want to explain my feelings. And I was like, yo, your feelings are not, they are not like the epicenter right now, It's a journey. But at the same time, it's important to not become impatient, because if we don't get all of this out there, things don't change.
Yeah.
If we don't start explaining to people, and sometimes it is 3 to 4 hours of explaining to, hardcore, I support Trump, I don't support Black Lives Matter, like literally having a 3 or 4 hour conversation with them before they finally turned around. I guess it kind of means that's a mantle we might have to don sometimes.
Yeah. And in this kind of revived period of social justice and racial justice, in these conversations we've been having as part of this series, we've talked a lot about, whose responsibility is it to share these stories, and that burden being placed on Black individuals. From your perspective, where does that responsibility end, or does it end for Black individuals? Do we continue to force ourselves to bear this burden of like, now's the time, I guess, here we go? Or do we say, read a book?
I think it's a little of both. I look at it as the same way as when I teach a class, which is, I'm going to go about it 3 ways for you. I'm going to visually show you, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to demonstrate, and then after that, the responsibility is yours. So it's the same thing, right? Like, we have got to have responsibility of our stories and how they are told, because if we don't, it gets jacked up. And then we want to holler about that later on. So we have to have some responsibility in saying, these are our stories, these are our lives, these are the things that are important to us, and we have to keep hollering about it. And then we also have to say, all right, now I done told you, so handle up.
Yeah.
It's time for you. Like, if you have
pass that responsibility baton.
Yes. I've been telling you. And we have to make clear that in doing so, we still say, while I'm giving you this information, It is not yours to do whatever you want with. I am happy to tell you my experience. I am happy to tell you my story. But the minute you decide you're going to write a play about it and you don't have a person of color behind it, we're going to fight. Like, I will fight you in the street like a Ninja Turtle.
Only something Becki would say.
Yeah, fight you in the sewer, man. But I feel like that's something that we have to be clear about, you know? Like, I look at Mulan. Okay. So the first movie was like, yeah, that's cute. You got it mad wrong. It's like there's so many problematic things in the first Mulan, right? So this would be their time to get it right this time. And they were like, look, we have all Asian actors. And I was like, well, you should, because it's
So you did the base
Mulan.
The base level.
Yeah, it's like you did the very least.
Yeah.
But who behind the table was there of Asian descent? Zero. No one. So in that moment, like, that was a responsibility that somebody was like, I'm going to tell their story, but I'm going to jack it up. Okay. And I don't think they understand why there are so many Asian people who are upset about that. They're kind of like, well, we did a movie.
Yeah.
Like, what? Why aren't you happy about it? Like, see, look, there's Asian people in it.
Yeah.
Look, they're fighting. There's no songs. We took the dragon out. See, we did that. And it's like, okay, but maybe you should have had somebody else on board.
Yeah. You bring up a really interesting perspective here that I don't think we've talked about with anyone yet. From an artistic standpoint, and you being your artistic side of being an artist, do you think, or are you predicting that non-Black individuals are going to take these experiences and stories that we're telling and use them for their own gain?
Oh, yes. Yes. There's money to be made in culture. There is money to be made in culture. And I believe the Black culture and the Black experience has been commodified to no end. To no end. And like, man, every time I see it happen, I'm like, yo, everybody want to be Black, but don't nobody want to be Black. You know? And whenever I see movies that are out that focus on like slave trauma, I'm like, okay, cool. So you just took that and you're reminding us very, very clearly, we know your experience, but we're going to tell it our way. Okay. Thanks for that, I guess. Thanks. I hate it. You know? I think about hip hop. When hip hop came about, the biggest thing that white record companies were saying were, this is a trend, it's never going to catch on, it's never going to catch on, and then they figure out they can make a lot of money off of it, and now it's a global phenomenon. And I have friends in other countries who were like, oh, hip-hop was created here, and I'm like, I will flip a table, it was not. That was the one unique American thing that we've come up with, like, that is ours, you know? And if there's money to be made from something that is of color, yeah, someone's going to jump on it and take it. Why wouldn't you? If you can, you don't have to create anything. You can just like be like, yank mine and like make billions of dollars on it. I'd be lazy. I'd be like, oh, pay me, you know?
I'm going to be fascinated to see kind of where we are 5 years from now.
Man.
Yeah, and how all this is going to play out in our creative industry.
We're going to have George Floyd plays coming out left and right. We're going to see another resurgence of artists who are trying to give their perspective on these protests and things like that. And I think we're going to have another smaller sector of white artists who are saying, but we were at the protest too. Why don't we get to tell your story? And we're going to have to explain again, yes, you were there. And yes, awesome if you are an ally, but that is not being an ally.
Yeah.
You know, like we're going to have to, I can already feel it coming because I'm seeing it happen already in smaller ways where I have to be like, shh, it's not being an ally. I know you want to write this monologue. I know you want to write this one person play about this. That's really rad. But also you don't get to speak for somebody Black. I know you're in your feels about this. I'm glad that you are in your feels about this because that tells me like you're kind of seeing like, yo, things are messed up. But also know how far you can go. And we're going to have to teach people a lot about that.
So speaking of teaching, so at the time that we're doing this interview, a couple weeks of school under your belt now, specifically as a Black individual, what has the experience been like for you as an educator going back in the classroom at a time when we're in a pandemic, but also at a time when we're facing increased calls for racial justice in this country?
I'd be lying if I said it wasn't slightly terrifying. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't anxious. One, because I see the rates of COVID in Black and brown citizens, and they are increasing, and that's horrible. But it all, like, that to me is terrifying. But the part that makes me anxious is finding a way to keep reaching my students who are primarily Black, brown, Asian, and I have a few white students as well, to get them to still create, and to learn how to use their rage and anger productively. Because yes, I 100% support the protests. I do. But I also have to tell these kids, guys, you're minors. You're minors. So you have got to find ways to make change and to keep conversations going and stay out of jail, you know? And that's the hardest thing because they're fired up. And I love that. Like Gen Z, man, I love the fact that Gen Z like is so lazy on so many things, but like are so fired up when it comes to social issues. I'm like, yes, kids, get it. But I also have to explain to them, like, guys, this passion, and I know you physically feel it, this passion that you are feeling has got to be put to work. It can't just fester. We can't just get on social media and scream. We can't just scream at our parents. We have to use it for change. So that is the part that has become tricky because it's like passion, but they're also depressed. And so how do you shape both things to work and to keep moving? That's like been the biggest thing.
So it sounds like you basically have kind of a dual responsibility here. You have the responsibility for taking care of yourself, right?
Yeah.
And that responsibility that you feel for your students as well. From a purely support system perspective, what is your support system? Like, is there a support system in place at the district level, at the school level, in your personal life? What do you have that keeps you grounded and helps to keep you going? Because that's a lot that you're carrying.
Woo. Our school really tries. Like we have now, we have a committee based of teachers and students of color to figure out ways to make sure that we are supporting our students of colors and our teachers of color during this time. But I mean, everybody's just trying to swim. The analogy, we're trying to build the plane and fly it at the same time. It's literally what's happening. So school is more based for helping the students. And I have to keep that in mind. It's like you have to almost separate yourself out. Like, this is the time for the kids because they are the ones that have to keep going. And then when I get home, I have to go ahead and just, and I have strict rules. When I get home, I am not watching anything political. I'm not turning on MSNBC, Fox News, anything. I shut it down. Cartoons. We're not watching it. We're not doing that. I might watch some K-pop or listen to some K-pop or watch some K-dramas or whatever. And then I have to be careful with who I speak to regarding this. Because speaking with my parents about things, they've lived through some mess. They really have. So it's almost like you can't fully have the conversation with them because that's a trigger for them. And there's no sense in both of us being in the drowning boat, you know? So sometimes it just means like, take a walk, write it out. Like, it's not always possible to talk it out with someone, you know? Right now I'm dating an Asian guy. And so having to explain what that is to him sometimes, it's like, never mind, I'm not going to talk to you about it. Like, he's trying to get it because it's a different reality for him, right? So he's trying to get it like in terms of being Black, but it's the same shit sandwich, but it's a different angle of the sandwich that we have to take a bite out of, right? So like, there are certain things that we can meet and we can easily talk about. Like he talks about when COVID first happened and the harassment he faced being Asian and being told that people were literally in his face about that. And he was like, is that what black people feel like? And I was like, yes. Yeah. Now you got it. I wish you didn't have to get it. Cool. Let's talk about something else though, because this is going to be very hard for you to kind of wrap your mind around, right?
And hard for you to continue to
so
talk about.
So sometimes it really just has to be, you are alone in it and you have to write it out. One of my friends in New York started like a Black woman Zoom call every Wednesday. And it's the time to just, the things that you don't get to talk about with your parents or your friends or whatever. That's the time for us to talk about being Black females in the entertainment industry, be it film or theater, trying to create stuff. Or sometimes it's just like, girl... And everybody just takes a deep sigh after that, and everybody knows exactly what that means. Girl, you kind of have to find your way. Yeah. I wish I could say something more like amazing or interesting about it, but
I just wish I could provide more.
Well, and I feel that too. Like I want to be able to help people. But eventually you have to be like, you got to help yourself. Like you got to.
So switching gears here to the theater sector as a whole. We know there's issues. There's always been issues. They've always been there, likely always will be there.
Of course.
Do you have hopes for the sector, though, as we are in this time of, like, what change do you want to see happen, and do you think that change is going to happen?
I think the change is going to happen if we stay on it. We cannot get... we can't find any chill yet.
Yeah.
That's not something that can happen right now. That means that, because let's be honest, there's going to be theaters that say like, no, we are committed. We are committed to Black Lives Matter. We are committed to having people of color, not just Black, but every color at our table. And then you have to hold them to that. And I don't mean, oh, look, we did In the Heights, so we're good. Thank you for that one show. But also, like, it's about casting. And not just, well, we had 3 people of color. They were in our ensemble. Like, no. You have to remind, like, number one, we've got to show up. Show up and show out. They can't not take all of us.
Yeah.
They can't kick us all out. So we have to show up. And we have to stay on theaters for it. And then we have to hold them accountable. And I know there were a lot of people who immediately were like, oh, but you're bored. Fine, get rid of your board. Da, da, da. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that to suddenly just upheaval your entire board of directors. But what that does mean is when there are opportunities for us to join boards, we need to. We need to. And if there's not, then we keep knocking on the door and asking, hey, I want to know about your board of directors. How can I get on? How do I help?
Yeah.
How do I get, we have to make sure that we keep, nothing is going to ever just open the door and here it is for you. Yeah. Is that laborious? Yeah, it is. It's tiring, but that's what has to happen. We cannot just sit back and wait for things to change because we're yelling about change. Show up, show out, Yeah.
So when COVID hit and then the murder of George Floyd happened, we had a lot of theaters, specifically in Dallas, who came out with letters of support, statements of support for the Black community and Black Lives Matter, which can be an easy thing to do and say when you're not producing anything, right? You don't have to, there's no responsibility because you don't have to cast anyone. You're not doing any shows. Your theaters are shut down. When our industry picks back up, fingers crossed, hopefully sooner rather than later,
right?
Do you think that same support's going to continue? And if it doesn't, what is our role as Black individuals, even more than what you just said? Like, does it go beyond that?
I think there are certain theaters who will stand by it. There are certain theaters who have been trying to do the work for a while. And they may not have always gotten it right, but they've definitely been trying.
Yeah.
And I realize, again, change is not going to happen like that. You have to keep fighting for it. So there are already certain theaters that are doing that. And then there are those that it is lip service. And when it's lip service, and we know it's lip service, we do not support them. I cannot tell people enough. Our dollar means so much. And I know it seems like we're going off on like, oh, well, boycott, we boycott everything. No, but here's the thing. It's the truth.
Yeah.
No one's going to figure out anything until you get in their pocket.
Money is power.
Always.
Yeah.
Always. So if we are not showing up, we're not buying tickets. We're not buying season tickets. I'm not even going to darken their doorstep for an audition. All of that. Like, and guess what? We need white people to do that too. Mm-hmm. When a group of people say, nah, we're not supporting you, then one of two things will happen. Either they actually will make the change or they'll shut down. And if they shut down, I don't care. Walk it off. I have like no pity
no
for it.
patience for it. Yeah,
I don't. There's a certain theater in Plano that has long been steeped in racism, sexual harassment and racism. And the minute I said, I will not go see a show if my friend is in it, I don't care. I love you, but I'm not going to go support that theater. I will not. I don't care if it's a free ticket. I'm not going. I will not give them any promotion. I will not say their name. That's it. Mm-hmm. I had some blowback from some of my friends about that. They were like, well, but I mean, but theater, like we have to support theater because it's, and I said, they're doing just fine.
Yeah.
That's the problem, is that y'all keep going back over there, think, well, I'm going to do this one play. Well, I'm just going to do it as a favor. Well, no. If they've shown you to be an asshole, believe it and stop giving them money. Sorry, I know I'm getting like really heated about it, but like it just makes no sense to me to keep supporting things that are not here to make society better.
Yeah. And you touch on a really interesting point here, Becki, of a counter argument that I've seen multiple times has been like, but we got to support the arts. What do you say to those people who make that counter argument of, but we got to support the arts?
No, we don't. No, we do not. It is show business. Mm-hmm. And if any other business did not go ahead and do what we wanted to do as consumers, would we go there? I love Chick-fil-A sandwiches. Do you think I go to Chick-fil-A knowing what their policies are? No. Why? Because my money counts for something. And it's the same thing with theater. Our money counts. And especially now when theaters are like, yo, we need money. Yeah. Oh my God, we need money. Okay, well, if you need money, then you're going to do what you need to do that is right. And if you can't be bothered to act right, then I ain't going to give you my money. It's that simple. No, we don't.
Thank you for breaking that down for me and for those who are watching as well. I think very well said there. Yes,
I realize I sound very strident about this, but like
it's true though. Everything you're saying,
it just makes me crazy when people are like, "But the arts are dying." No. They're not. There are some great theaters that are doing great work. Mm-hmm. There are some great theaters that care about not just Black theater, not just, we're going to do a season of Black shows, but they care about seeing to it that people of color are working with them and not in a strained relationship. They actually care about that. And that's awesome. Give them your money. Yep. Give them your money. Give them your patronage. Give them your donations. Give them your time. Yep. That's what we want to see.
Yeah, I think you hit on a point there. We have a huge elitist problem in our theater scene here in Dallas, where people they want to be associated with the largest theaters because they think that's the best product, when really there's so many small, great theaters in our city doing wonderful work, who have always been doing wonderful work.
Yes. And people just sleep on them. And I saw one show there and I'm like, good, go keep going. See more, and I get it. Like tickets are expensive. Bro, you just spent like $25 at Alamo Draft House, like for a movie. That's not like before you even started paying for all the food and stuff. So if you can spend all that for one night in a movie, you can spend that to see a show.
I'm curious, do you teach that same message in your classroom?
Oh, yeah.
And how do your students react to that?
Actually, okay, so yesterday in my tech theater class, we were talking about marketing and publicity, and I asked the students, I said, how much would you pay for a ticket to see a show? I broke it down, both professional show and like educational theater. I said, how much would you pay for a high school show? This kid said less than $1. I said, who? And it's on a pear deck, so you can see the responses they're writing. I said, whoever said that, your mama's a hoe. I said, you are not about to sit there and tell me you're going to pay less than $1 to see a show. Well, I mean, if the show's good, well, how do you know the show's good? You won't pay money to see it. Oh, yeah. So what are you going to do? Are you going to spend, you're going to spend money at a movie theater, but you won't support upcoming artists, which, let's be real, that's what educational theater is. Mm-hmm. No one says you have to spend $35 on a high school play. And by the way, those high schools that are charging $35 for a ticket, go sit down somewhere. Your child is not a Broadway star. Hush. Sit down. Like, it's too much money for a high school ticket. But still support your high school theater shows, right? So then I said, okay, well, now that you know that you can probably drop $3 to $5 on a ticket for a high school show, what about if you go see a professional show? Oh, I don't know how much I'd spend. Okay, everybody was getting all hype about Hamilton. How much would you spend to go see Hamilton? Well, I don't, and I was like, exactly. You realize there are people who spend over $1,500 for a ticket? Mm-hmm. Really? I said, I spent $250 for mine. That's my cap. I said, but could that $250 gone to about 4 or 5 other theaters?
Yeah.
I said, that's the rub right there. What are you willing to spend for a ticket, and what are you willing to spend to continue something like the arts? Mm-hmm. So by the time that conversation was over, they were like, oh, well, I mean, I guess if I have $10, I could do that. I said, okay, cool. That's doable. That's doable. And guess what? If you don't have more than $10, can you still come on Pay What You Can nights to theaters? That's a thing? It's a thing. Can you volunteer as an usher and still be able to see a show? Oh, I could do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's still ways for us to keep supporting this and still give our money when we can.
Yeah.
And that's like, again, show up and show out.
Yeah. Becki, thank you so much for spending and sharing your time with us and lending your voice. What you have said has been incredibly insightful, not only from your perspective as a Black artist, but your perspective as an educator and how you are using that identity and those experiences to further teach your students is inspiring. And so thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Well, thanks. No one's ever said I was inspiring in school because I probably say wild stuff all the time.
So thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time and lending your voice. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Devon.